Hello, Trekkies and Trekkers. Welcome to this amazing Star Trek podcast on Trek Tuesday. I'm your host, Maya Eileen, and I recap every 2 weeks an episode of Star Trek TNG. Today we recap the episode Yesterday's Enterprise. But first, a note from the host of this podcast. I'm still looking for a Trek friend who wants and have the time to recap every 2 weeks an episode of Star Trek with me. That also means I have decided to rename the podcast because Girls Talking Trek was something from me and Amanda. The podcast will now only be available on YouTube or the Facebook group. If you are interested, please let me know. I would appreciate it if you liked this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and family. And now for the plot of the episode. The starship USS Enterprise encounters a rift in space-time. The crippled USS Enterprise C, a ship believed destroyed more than 2 decades earlier, emerged. The Enterprise D undergoes a radical change from its previous timeline. It is now a warship, and the United Federation of Planets is at war with the Klingons. Neither Worf nor Counselor Troy are present, and Tasha Yar, killed years before in the original timeline, runs the tactical station. The Enterprise C must return to the past, knowing this would be a suicide mission. Refuses to give such an order based on Guinan's intuition. Captain Rachel Garrett of the USS Enterprise C and her crew learn they traveled into the future. Garrett explains that they responded to a distress call from a Klingon outpost on Narendra 3 and were attacked by Romulan starships. While his crew repairs the Enterprise C, Picard and his command staff discuss whether the ship should return to the past. Commander Riker argued that their deaths would be meaningless, but Data suggests that it would be considered an honorable act by the Klingons. Picard discussed the situation with Garrett, revealing to her that the Federation is on the verge of defeat and one more ship will make no difference. But if the Enterprise C returns to the past, they might prevent the war from starting. Garrett agrees and tells her crew that they will return through the anomaly. The 2 ships are ambushed by a Klingon bird of prey. Garrett is killed, and her helmsman Richard Castillo takes command. During the repair efforts, Yar becomes close to Castillo, but is unnerved by tense interactions with Guinan. Guinan reveals that she knows Yar dies a meaningless death in the other timeline. Yar requests a transfer to the Enterprise C. As the Enterprise C prepares to return through the anomaly, 3 Klingon battlecruisers attack. With the anomaly becoming unstable, Picard orders the Enterprise D to cover the Enterprise C withdrawal. The Enterprise D suffers massive systems damage and major crew losses, including the deaths of Commander Riker. With the Enterprise D on the brink of destruction, the Enterprise C travels the anomaly, triggering the return of Enterprise D's previous timeline. Guinan, the only one subtly aware of what has transpired, asks Geordi LaForge to tell her about Yar. So I'm going to rewatch this episode. I hope you do too, and then I will be back to recap it. Stay tuned and don't go away. Well, we're starting with the first scene that Worf is getting and trying a new drink with Guinan. And what do we know? No, it's prune juice. Of course, Worf's favorite drink. But it's a totally funny scene. It's the first time we see him drink prune juice. For a dark episode, the start of this episode is very funny because, just like I told you, the Worf is starting with a new drink, as in prune juice, but he's also talking with Guinan about companionship, and he said, I need a Klingon female to have companionship with, and Earth women are too fragile. And then Guinan said, well, there are a few women who will tell you that you are tame. And I had to think of Jadzia Dax. And then we hear Worf laughing. And that is not often that he is laughing, so it's quite nice in a way. Then a anomaly appears and Worf had to come to the bridge, and Guinan know right away that something was wrong. So the Enterprise C appears, and right away the timeline is shifted, and we see the Enterprise D is now a warship, and who is back at tactics? Lieutenant GR. And if I'm correct, Denise Cosby came back especially for this episode because, of course, she was Tasha was already dead. And telling you something nice as well. In Star Trek Online, there is a episode that called Yesterday's Enterprise, and it's in the same timeline as in this episode. But of course, you're going back to an anomaly, and you coming to this Tolian planet as a freighter captain. And you meet Castellio and Tasha Yar and some other friends we know. And they trying to escape the Tolians and going back through the anomaly with the Enterprise C. And that is a very, very nice mission. I always like to play it. So it is nice that they have been inspired by this episode. Do you notice that the interior of the bridge, or the layout of the bridge, is different than the normal timeline? And why does the platform where Picard is sitting on, why does it have a little stairs? Because that's just only ridiculous to have little stairs on the bridge. So the Enterprise C is in a rough shape, and emergency teams have been beamed down to it. The away team is on the bridge, and what I noticed right away is that they are having very different kind of instruments. So the light is different, the scanning equipment is different, and it makes, I don't want to say it makes no sense, but it is like a totally different Enterprise crew than we know. So Captain Garrett is being transported to sickbay. And, Dr. Christian made a little mistake of already mentioned that where she's going is to another Enterprise. So, this anomaly has been causing a lot of trouble already. Commander Riker is giving his report, and he has 9 hours to get the Enterprise C on her way, otherwise they will evacuate the survivors and destroy the ship. And then something happens that never will happen in the normal timeline, is that Guinan is coming on the bridge. And she definitely is feeling that something is going on and doesn't know what she has to think about it. She only has this feeling. Captain Picard went to the sickbay to take a look at the casualties and of course talking with Captain Garrett. Of course we know that Captain Garrett is coming from the past, and she is wearing a Rod of Khan uniform, and she is totally curious and shocked what happened. She is totally confused where she is, because she doesn't recognize the uniforms, she doesn't recognize the sick bay, etc., etc. So now the question will be, of course, in how far is Captain Picard telling her what he knows? Well, at least Picard is honest. He's telling her what he knows. And of course, Captain Garrett is very shocked, and she wants to inform her crew, and she doesn't want to go back to the past in her own timeline. But I think as well as Guinan as Picard know that they have to, because the timeline will be too much disturbed of it. Well, they are now on the Enterprise C, and Riker is in charge, of course, to get the repairs done. And we see that Castellio and Yar already formed a bond. And not only that, Castellio is talking about that they are 20 years in the future, and what are if they're coming back after 22 years? So that's remind me again of the really the Sealer timeline on Star Trek Online, that Castellio and Yar had a relationship, even as husband and wife, and they survived on this planet with anomalies. And I always think that Tasha in this episode look a bit darkish, and she is very styled as a rough and tough person. But her whole actions is very mellow, if I can say it like that. And that is something I don't think she would have when she is on a warship. Castellio and Yar are back on the Enterprise, and Yar is giving him a tour. And she talks with pride about the Enterprise D. And you already could see that there is a little sparkle between them. And their friendship is growing with the minute. Captain Picard is also thinking of sending the Enterprise C back. But that would mean that it will be a death sentence because they will coming back to the exact same time that they went into the anomaly. Means that they will have a media fight with the Romulans and probably they will lose. So, and you know what weird is, although this Enterprise is a warship, I do think that people are quite mellow for a warship. I don't know what you guys think about it. And comment that in, of course, in the comment section below on YouTube or, of course, on the Facebook group. And, of course, we have a special chat for discussing the current episode. So you can do it there as well. So Castellio and Yar are discussing what they need to do, and they inform Captain Garrett, and Captain Garrett wants to go back to duty because the ship and crew needs her. And Dr. Crusher doesn't want her to go because she still had at least 24 hours rest. And like most of the captains, of course, they're too stubborn to give in, as in Doctor's orders. And, well, she is just going. And I had a bit of a weird feeling with the two Enterprise working together. I mean, the crew, it's just weird and not, yeah, it's a weird time console. Castellio and Tasha are now in 10 forward, and you could see that Guinan feels that it is so weird and wrong that Tasha is there, and she asks if Tasha already has ordered, and it seems that Tasha thinks that everything is normal. But you really could see that Guinan has the opposite feeling. And the other thing is, she is wearing blue. I mean Guinan. And normally we see her in a very different color, most of the time pink or purple. So why is she wearing blue now? Okay, there is a little fling between Tasha Yar and Castillo. And they're now on first name basis. So, as you can guess, there is something between them. What we're not going to see in this episode, of course. And we will see later on that Tasha is going to the Enterprise C because she doesn't live in the current in the normal timeline of the Enterprise D. So the senior staff of the Enterprise D have a meeting, and I have no idea why, but Picard goes with Guinan's recommendation. That means the 125 people of the Enterprise C will die, and probably the timeline will correct themselves in the correct timeline. And it is a bit weird because Picard didn't want to go on Guyna's recommendation just of her gut feeling. And I think that is pretty normal. But the species of Guinan, of course, are very wise, and they have been very true time and etc. And the only thing I think here is that I don't know why. In one way I can understand that, because it is just altering the future if the Enterprise C crew is staying. And what will happen to the original timeline? Will there be war? Will there be even a Enterprise D and his crew? So it is it's two ways. Of course, sending them back into that the timeline will not change, and there will be no war. If they stay, then the timeline will change, and they can't re-weapon the Enterprise C with future weapons, because that will be a major disaster for in a timeline. So yeah, I can understand why Picard is doing this or asking this. But on the other hand, and I think that is his conflict of the two of it, because, and that is in a one way weird, they are now a warship, but Picard is thinking as a captain of a science ship, with more compassion in a way. So I think he has this double conflict in him if and what he would decide. So Data and Tasha are in the turbolift, and there's a conversation here with Tasha feeling quite out of her place, and she likes Castillo. But of course, right away I had to remember that episode when she had sex with Data, and for Data she was someone important, and it is kind of weird to be in this timeline, and yeah, they look like this, etc. And now I'm looking at Data becoming more white in this episode. I don't know why, but yeah. Captain Picard informs Captain Garrett, and she is a bit of mistrusting Guinan just because of her feeling, and because as well I can arrange that you speak to her, etc, etc, etc. And yeah, maybe you have all the feelings after that. And in one way it's maybe very unique. And normally we see that Guinan keep herself distance to a certain way, and she, how can I say this? She is very observant now what all is happening around her. Captain Garrett has decided that they will go back, and they are needed to come with Picard, but she asked for a moment to say goodbye to Castillo. And I think she still has that weird feeling of not belonging on the Enterprise D. So I think that's why she's gonna ask if she can stay on the Enterprise C. When Tasha takes her goodbye to Castillo, and you can see there was more to it, because she is hoping and he is hoping, and then at the moment that Tasha wants to return to the Enterprise D, they've been attacked by the Klingons, by one Klingon bird of prey, and Picard's just safely on board, so they probably will go having a fight with the Klingons, of course. There's one question though. Why were it both Enterprises not moving? You would think that they will move because they've been attacked. And seeing Picard now on his bridge, the tactical officer behind him, that is a familiar one. I think he is often a extras. So, and the Enterprise C has been fired upon it, and there was a big blast and it hits Captain Garrett. Well, it was a bit weird because you don't see the explosion around her, so that's a bit suspicious. Picard asked for a update to Captain Garrett, but she doesn't respond. And Tasha told him that Captain Garrett died. And that's how the situation is right now. So Castillo tells Picard that he will bring the Enterprise C back to their timeline. And even when Riker is summoning what the Enterprise C got, and where they are against still, even then Castillo is wanting to bring it back, because that was also the order of Captain Garrett, and he is the only senior officer still alive. And then Tasha is bringing him to the transport room, and they have a little chat, and then they kissed. It would be nice if we could see more of their romance. And that's what I'm telling you guys about the Star Trek Online episode. There's a lot more, and although Tasha has Sela, with of course of her Romulan father, I do think Castillo and Yar are more a better couple than with everyone else. As Yar's side, of course. Even with Data. After that kiss, I think Yar is very well aware that she doesn't belong on the Enterprise D. So she went to Guinan and asked her straight in her face of, Guinan, do I belong here? I don't belong here. So Guinan was telling her, no, you don't belong here. And she asked, where do I belong? Or what happened to me? And the only thing Guinan could say is, you're supposed to be dead. And it was a meaningless death. And I think that was the moment that Tasha accepted her fate, but also asked a transfer to the Enterprise C. So she will not altered the normal Enterprise D timeline. So that's a big question to ask of Picard at the moment right now. So she has this big talk with Picard, and they are arguing a bit, and then Picard let her go. And that's a big deal. So I do think, well, I say this, Picard knew right away that Tasha had talked to Guinan, and Guinan had said something. So at first hand he wanted not to grant Tasha's wish to transfer to the Enterprise C. But because he knew that it was true that Tasha didn't belong in that timeline, he let her go. The only thing I expected more was that they have this goodbye, because Tasha at that point in that timeline was already 4 years working as tactical officer. So there must be some kind of a working family bond between Picard and her. And we always know that she was loved. I remember the first or one of the other episodes when Picard had to go on trial, or Mankind had to go on trial, and Tasha was with him, and she was the first one who Q froze. But also that Q gave her the penalty bank, and he was consulting her of, okay, you are now alone, and you can have emotions here on the bridge right now. So that comes to reminder of what kind of a bond they really have. And of course, there are this ranking as officers and their behavior, etc. And it costed Picard a long time to relax with his officers and have fun for once in a while. So yeah, it's a bit weird that they just cut off boundaries and not saying goodbye. That's a bit weird for me. So Tasha is taking tactical now on the Enterprise C, and they are ready now to go into the Rift, and Enterprise D will cover their way up because there are 3 Klingon birds on their way. And I just see it now, but Picard still have hair here. What is a bit weird, because you know him always without hair. And yeah, I think it's maybe part of the look of the other timeline. Oh crap. I just hear the line that Picard says, make sure that history know who the Enterprise is. And that is the same line that they put in one of the episodes of Star Trek Online. There was this, I think it's called Measure Part 2. And this is from the Discovery timeline. And also this is when you go to Excalibur and have to go on trial for Mankind. But in the end, everything went wrong, and you have to go to your ship to fight the Borg Queen and consort. And you get help from all the well-known starships with their captains, including Captain Picard saying this line. So that's a nice touch. So the Klingons are attacking the Enterprise D now. And because Tasha left, Riker is on tactical now. And of course, as a commander, you have to know all the facets of the ship, of course. But still, it's a bit weird to see him at tactical. After a bit of a fight, they're back in their own timeline. And with the two familiar faces that wasn't in the other timeline, of course, Worf and Counselor Troy. So Guinan reports in and asks Picard if everything is alright. And Picard was a bit surprised to hear from Guinan because she never does. And then she is sitting and having some tea with Geordi LaForge and asks Geordi if he could tell about Tasha Yar. So, and this is also the end of this episode, guys. I really enjoyed this episode. And let me take a look what the viewing rating is on IMDb. That is a 9.2. And I must say, I think I'm about in that direction as well. I really loved the episode, especially that Tasha Yar is back. And I think this is one of the better episodes that they made, also in writing. And it's, I think, one of the first time we really work with the anomaly that can be there in space. So yeah, I liked it. Well, thank you guys for listening. And join me in 2 weeks for a new episode recap. In the next episode recap, we will recap the episode The Offspring, which Amanda would love to do that. She would really love to talk about Data and his daughter and the whole thing. So what I wanted to do is dedicate that episode to her. And if you want to be the replacement of her, well, just let me know and we can see what we can do. I also have 2 other podcasts, namely the My Eileen Talks podcast, which in some way is a geek podcast wherein I talk a lot about Star Trek. And the There's Ready Room podcast, which is my Dutch Trek podcast. And that means that I also will be speaking in my own native language, of course. And of course, this I made that also for my own Dutch Trekkies. So you can find both podcasts on YouTube and Facebook. And the My Eileen Talks podcast is also to find on Spotify, Anchors, Google Podcast, and Amazon Music. I will see you in 2 weeks. Live long and prosper.